My name is Galena. I'm the fiancé of Joshua Lee McCollister, who was murdered on July 8th by Deunn Willis and robbed by Danielle Durand. Every time I shoot one of these videos, when I have to do that intro, I think one of these times I'm going to have a not so hard time saying he was murdered, but not yet. It's still so hard. And it's still so hard, especially because every time I do it, I think it's not just that he was murdered, it's that he went through so much fear for the last 6 months of his life because of the stalking situation. He shouldn't have had to go through any of that. Now, I've said before, there's two principal people that were to blame. That was the instigator and that was the enabler. I also hold Mrs. Forrest very much to blame. I hold her a little bit less to blame, though, because she was only acting on behavioral tips that she picked up from the instigator. Like, you take him out of the equation, there is no Mrs. Forrest. And also, how do you put this? I've seen the texts, and as threatening as they are, as menacing towards me and Josh as they are, this is a person who is clearly very delusional. She is not right in the head. I don't know that she even knows right from wrong. She's sick. I'm not saying that in a pedantic type way. She's sick. One person who is not sick like that, though, is the enabler. I'm going to do this video today about the enabler. So, I was in a really bad situation for a very long time. I wanted out. I really desperately wanted out. You can talk to anybody that's friends with me and they will tell you that I was terrified of the enabler years ago. Like, especially, it was about 4 years ago that this person started becoming a real threat to me. And by threat, the instigator made it very clear to me that if I got out of line, the enabler was going to smack me back into line. I don't mean physically, I meant that she was gonna come at me, and she was gonna come at my kids. And I lived in fear of this. I lived in desperate fear of this for years. And I really do mean everybody that knew me knew that this person I was terrified of. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is this is a person that has a lot of money, a lot of influence. She has a way of making people indebted to her. And I didn't have resources like she did. I didn't have the social clout like she did. Sure as heck didn't have the money that she did. I did not want to have to come up against this person. Because it didn't matter if I was going to be in the right or not. Not with the kind of money that she could throw at me. Throw at making my life hell is what I mean to say there. And anybody... I couldn't see myself being able to fight her. You know, before Josh died, I was a very different person. I was meek, shy, very introverted, very quiet, could not stand up for myself, couldn't even think to stand up for myself. You know, it took the love of my life being murdered to get me to this point of, hell no, I'm done. Because before, no. I was very nice. I was too nice to stand up for myself. That was I was a frog afraid of its own croak. I couldn't stand up to her. I just couldn't. But that wasn't the only reason that I was afraid of her. while she does have a lot of clout in Mendocino County, I know the real her. The her behind the mask. And the her behind the mask is a very different person than most people know. Specifically, the story that to me always typifies her is that she had a very brutally nasty divorce. It was real bad. I mean, like, epically bad. Like, you know, that meme, you know, if your life is a movie, would people watch it? Oh my God, people would have been just eating the popcorn watching how bad this divorce was. And to be perfectly honest, I actually was very sympathetic towards her for a lot of her position. However, there got to be the point where she took things too far. Even for the situation, she took things too far. And specifically, well, she asked two of her kids if they would help her murder their dad. You know, it's just, what do you even do with that? When that happens, that's the part where you just have to say, okay, lady, I tap out right here. And I have heard this story from one of her kids repeatedly. I don't even know how many times over the last couple decades, how she came and asked them to help murder their father. And, you know, it did not happen because her two kids essentially said, Mom, you're freaking nuts. No, we're not going to help you murder Dad. But that's why it didn't happen. It wasn't because, you know, she got her conscience got checked. You know, she was up for it. She was down. And I tell you that if you knew what this person does in Mendocino County, you would be shocked that somebody that would try to get her kids to kill somebody is doing this. So, you know, it's just, I didn't want to go up against her for that reason also, is because I know that behind the smiles, behind the social leverage that she has, she's, I won't say crazy, she's not crazy. She understands right from wrong. She just does not care. And, you know, I know that she had this really good reason, this good story as to why she was going to murder this guy, but this is not the first husband of hers that she debated killing. You know, she had a husband before that. And she herself told me how she almost ran him over with a car. So, there's only so many, and then I almost murdered him stories that a person can come up with before you go, yeah, you're just in the dark triad, lady. Now, the dark triad, to those who don't know, I think this is psychopaths, narcissists, and, oh geez. Crap, I forget what the third one is, but basically these are, diagnoses that there is no help. This is just plain bad. No fixing it. You know, like Ted Bundy would be in the dark triad, for example. And when I reference something like this, you gotta bear in mind, I'm the daughter of a psychiatrist, so I don't say it lightly. I really don't. I have no doubt, though, if this lady sat down on a psychiatrist's couch and was confronted with some of the things she's done, she'd walk away with a diagnosis, probably of malignant narcissism. I don't want to go up against someone like that. Like, I'd had enough bad people in my life. I didn't want to have to go through one more, so I was in a position where I had to try to stay on this lady's good side. You know, Josh, his term for what was happening to me was I was essentially being held captive for years. And he was determined to break me out. He was so determined that he was going to free me. And I knew he did not have any idea of what he was up against. I tried explaining it to him, and, you know, he was so confident because he was so tough. Oh my God, that man was tough. But he was tough like you stand face to face with him and you say, let's go. Okay, fine. You know, he could deal with that kind of thing. He was not a backstabber, though. He wasn't the type of person that was sneaky. He was not up for the degree of, what's the word, subterfuge that these people were. He was too direct. He was too honest. I knew how bad it was going to get. I just hoped I was wrong. And you know, when you're in love, you believe in beautiful things, you believe in good things, and I was so incredibly in love with Josh, and I so wanted that future that we dreamed about, you know, of having a place somewhere remote by a river, away from people. That's what we dreamed of, and I really just believed it could happen because I loved him so much. And my first gut instinct that they were going to come at us with everything they had, that was the one that was correct. Ever since he died, she's been real quiet, ever since she sent me that message about she didn't mean to hurt anyone. Because I know she is terrified that I'm going to expose her. She deserves to be exposed. She's a bad person. I know that she has money. I know she has influence, social leverage in Mendocino County. She's a bad person. She's just a straight up evil person. You know, there's a phrase I saw in a movie once, face of a Buddha, heart of a serpent, and that is her. I mean, if you look at religions the world over, there are certain basic principles that they all live by. One of them is be kind to widows, be kind to widowers. You know, the ending to that situation with Josh's wife's death shawl, what she was wearing when she died, the thing that was more precious to Josh than anything except Colleen's ashes. The way that I was able to get that back is the instigator said, oh, I'll give you this back. Just show up and I'll give you, be at your house and I'll give you this back. So I open up the door and he makes this big dramatic production out of handing it over like I should have expected out of him, but it wasn't just him that had been holding Colleen's death shawl captive, and it wasn't just Heidi that had been holding the death shawl captive. There was the enabler. She was the one taping this while he was making this production. And she was, I swear to God, I remember her cackling. She had this big grin on her face because, see, they'd wanted Josh to be the one to get the shawl back because I think Josh would have lost his head and wanted to punch this guy in the face. Most grieving widows would have. But I wouldn't let him do it. I said, baby, stay away from them. They're toxic. Stay away. And so they got the reaction out of me instead. Because when I saw Colleen's death shawl treated like that, I was so angry. I was so freaking angry. You know, Colleen was not Josh's ex-wife. She was still his wife. She died. She didn't divorce him. That was his girl. There was no loving Joshua Lee McCollister, not long term anyway, without also loving Colleen. And even though I never met her, I loved Colleen. I loved Colleen because I came to know her through Josh. I came to know how brilliant Colleen was, how creative she was, and how kind she was. What a good woman Colleen was. I respected Colleen. I loved Colleen. And here they were playing keep away with the thing that she died in. And it disgusted me. It's still hard for me to even think about it. Especially because a thing about the enabler is she claims to be a woman of faith, a devout woman of faith. And all I could think when she was cackling about keeping this dead woman's shawl away from her widowed husband. It's like, I wish, lady, that your church could see you doing this. Do you think that anybody in your church would approve of this? Do you think God approves of this? Treating a widower like this. Using his dead wife to hurt him. See, that's the thing, she can look as good as she wants to the public who doesn't really know her. But the people who really do know her know that she's a very sadistic person behind the scenes, that she will hurt people. And I was terrified to go up against her for years. I stayed so subdued. Not because I was that afraid of the instigator. I could have stood up to him. I could not stand up to the enabler. Not until Joshua Lee McCollister was murdered. And now that he has been murdered, she's going to come to realize she shouldn't have done this to me. Like, you put a good person into a corner and you kick them, and you kick them, and you kick them, and sooner or later that person is going to figure out, you know what? I have nothing left to lose by kicking you back, lady. Nothing at all. Like, the day that Joshua Lee McCollister took that bullet, you're going to realize that coming at him and hurting him the way you did, because I have no doubt that when he was stabbed in the face or hit in the face with a crowbar or any of those other things that happened to him, somehow, some way, she had a hand in it. And if I am wrong, which she knows I'm not, but if I am wrong, well, I have no problem spending the rest of my life trying to prove that I'm not wrong. Bad person, man, just because someone goes to church, just because someone has money, just because someone has influence and knows when to do favors for the right people does not mean they're a good person. A person is a real person behind the scenes. That who they show to their friends and family for no reason, not to get brownie points. She's not a good person there. Because I guarantee you, when her ex-husband sees this video, and eventually he will, it'll happen, he's not going to be surprised at all that she was planning on murdering him, that she was asking her kids to help her murder him. And just think about that. I'll close on this. If you were going to murder your ex because they're just like the freaking devil, whatever, would you ask your children to do it? Would you want your children to risk prison for the rest of their lives like she did? Good mothers don't do that sort of thing. They want their children to have a good life. She wanted her children to prove how loyal they were. The enabler's a bad freaking person. Bad person. I was terrified of her, but I sure as hell am not now.